Well, hello, you're very welcome to the Irish Independence League of Ireland preview video, joined today by Dan McDonnell to look ahead to the first round of fixtures in 2026. A new season is upon us in the Premier Division. Dan, so many talking points to get into, I'm sure, today and across the season. Will Rovers win a sixth title in 7 seasons? James McLean's big return to the League of Ireland as well. We'll come into the games in a moment, but I suppose the big question a lot of people will be asking themselves this weekend and in the months ahead is, can anyone stop Shamrock Rovers?
Yeah, I mean, it is, and that is the thing. I was sort of looking at this, like there's so many things have happened in the 2020s, I suppose, in the league, and record crowds, record transfer fees. We've had that this winter with Shelbourne and Oran Casey, and outgoing transfers between Melia and Ajin Vuna. And there's sort of, like, again, a lot of firsts and doubling and trebling of attendances. Yet, if you were sort of decades from now, people might just, like historians or just the anoraks of that era, will just look at the 2020s and might just think, well, that was just the most dominant one club decade there has been. And if Shamrock Rovers win the title this year, that would be 6 and 7, as you mentioned. Like, that sequence hasn't been completed before. I think there's like 6 and 8 for Waterford in the 60s, early 70s. And then there's a couple that have done 5 and 6, like Rovers, like Cork United, I think, in the 40s, and Dundalk in recent times. So it is strange because people talk about the vibrancy of the league as a whole across the decade, and that's true. But there is this underlying theme. And I suppose last year, I mean, 2024 was one of the greatest seasons the league has ever had. I don't think anyone is reflecting on last year as a vintage year, and probably a big part of that was the lack of suspense around the title race. There's no reflection. I mean, Rovers just did their job. Can anyone stop them? I certainly believe that there'll be a title race this year. Whether that means that there'll be a different winner, that's probably two different things. I think maybe people are a bit scarred by writing them off last year and being so definitive and getting caught up in a team finishing the season strong that you're probably almost thinking, no, let's reset the default here. Rovers still have the best players, you would think, the best squad, although other squads have strengthened. That if they can have a normal year, it's Stephen Bradley's 10-year anniversary this year in the job, once he remains there for the season and everything remains sort of as is, you would think, look, they have a really, really good chance of retaining it. But I do think that Shelbourne's squad is getting there if one or two of their overseas recruits work, which is a bit of a gamble that they've taken. And Derry City, as you mentioned, the James McLean aspect, but also Patrick McLean. They've signed more so players from around the league. They seem to have more depth. I still need to see the evidence of Derry to be fully convinced how it's going to click there. But I hope we would have a title race at least.
We'll come on to Rovers and Dundalk in a second. I'll be at Tallaght Stadium on Friday night. But Dan, I know you're Brandywell bound on Friday night. Derry City against Sligo Rovers. I suppose we'll get a better idea in a couple of weeks of this Derry squad. As you said, recruiting from within the league for the most part. Darragh Markey, a big signing as well. I suppose a lot of people around Derry City would be hoping they really, really challenge this year.
Only have to. I mean, that's like the thing. I don't think second is going to be any good. And the way they've recruited is very much, sometimes people talk about a 3-year or a 4-year plan, and that can be a great safety net. That's not really the case there. And you can tell, and even the way James McLean has spoken, James Clark was probably the biggest splash they've made aside from the McLean stuff. James Clark was meant to be going overseas and definitely had opportunities, but I think Derry came in with a financial package that was able to compete very favourably as well. So, we saw James playing in midfield last Friday. It's a little bit different. The thing about Derry is the first 4 games were at home, which is weird. Like four Fridays in a row at the Brandywell to kick off the season. It's like a sort of a package deal someone would do, except this actually is their fixture list because Dundalk can't play in Oriel Park next week, so they flipped that fixture around. So it's sort of unprecedented for a team to have that type of start of the season, and particularly when it's they're trying to make this a difficult place to go. I think there's two sides to it with Derry. If they start great, the vibes will be good, the season will go well. If things start a little bit choppy, I don't think like Tiernan Lynch has enough credit in the bank there to not be under pressure and for people not to get a little bit angsty. So it really is such like, I know it's the early weeks of the season, biggest mistake you make every year, read too much into them. Oh, Shamrock Rovers have started slowly, they're done. You can't make that mistake again and again. But I do feel with Derry, how they start the season will define how they end the season. I just feel that's definitely the case. So this game against Sligo Rovers, yes, it's the first game of the season, but I think is a big one for them. And there's a few little angles to it, like Patrick McLean is not too loved in Sligo. Certainly with elements of the management there, I think, anyway, after leaving there sort of abruptly over the winter. So there's a nice little edge to it. But I do feel it's a game that Derry sort of have to win to just get the show rolling, because there was a great buzz in the away support last Saturday. If that's replicated by the whole crowd on Friday, it's going to be a really good event. Now they have to deliver with it.
Shamrock Rovers host Dundalk in the opening game of their title defence on Friday night, weather permitting, of course, I should say. People around Rovers confident the game will go ahead with that pitch at Tallaght Stadium. But just on the game, speaking to Stephen Bradley on Thursday morning, I was at their training ground. He's very happy with the place they're in, with how their squad is at the moment. But beginning this season, there'll be a lot of eyes on them. And I might just touch on Dundalk. We should say, coming up at the first time asking, I think a lot of pre-season predictions would be predicting them to go down. Like, how do you see Dundalk's squad, their hopes of preserving their top place status?
I think you're predicting them to go down. I mean, what's your reasons for that?
Well, like I just worry about their squad depth and their experience. Like they have brought in the likes of Rob Cornwall, Keith Buckley, but is there enough just all-round experience there in the Premier Division to keep them up? I think when you look at the likes of Galway United, Waterford, Sligo, three of them have managers who have good Premier Division experience under their belt. Kieran Kilduff coming up his first season in the Premier Division as a manager. You just worry about them. Like, it's just hard to see them finishing ahead of Waterford, Sligo and Galway.
Yeah. I think it's possible they could finish ahead of all of them. I don't think it's
really
completely far-fetched. Like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like they might have enough to stay up. I think they have. Obviously, the pitch has been relayed, which definitely will help. A couple of the players they've signed, definitely you would have a question mark around being a slightly injury prone, although I know Keith Buckley would say he was available for a good part of last year, just wasn't picked by Bohs. Rob Cornwall, but Darrell Horgan's there too, Vinnie Leonard, but also like Harry Groom. I think they have I think they have a good balance between experience and younger players, and I also just think that they have a hostile ground to go and visit, and I think that is a factor across the season. I think Kilduff's got something about him, so I think it's a tough start for them. I will say that. I mean, their first two games are away, the Shamrock Rovers and to Derry. So I'm not sure that I'm saying they're not going to go to Tallaght and get a result. I just think in terms of recruitment, like I think Galway United are a massive concern. I mean, they have to be. Like, they've lost some of their sort of frontline players to other clubs. Bobby Burns, one of them, to Dundalk. And I just don't know. Like, John Caulfield is keeping like some of the clubs out of the sort of the eastern part of the country to compete for players is difficult, and they have to roll the dice. I think Sligo Rovers have done well in getting players who know the league. And the likes of Alex Nolan, they've got Ryan O'Kane back. There's others. I think with Galway, there's just a few more gambles with players, and who knows? They could have signed several Moses Dyers, and it's going to be fine. Although, I mean, hopefully they don't all leave for Cambodia around 3 months into the season. So I just think there's a lot more. I'm not sure if there's a vibrancy there that is reflected elsewhere in the league, and John Caulfield will be desperate to prove people wrong on that, and he would never write him off with that in mind. But I think they are the red flag team, and I just have a feeling that Dundalk might be okay. I still sort of feel like I would fancy Shamrock Rovers to win tomorrow. Although, again, I mean, they are traditional slow starters. They come back in later than anyone else this year, and I think you have to be mindful of that. It can be perilous to make predictions for these opening games. I think they'll be fine over the period of time. But yeah, like Galway draw, I was going to say, I've done a lot on Galway there, so I may as well just lead into that. I mean that is a sort of a a temperature check fixture for those teams. Like, where are Galway at? What's the local atmosphere like? What's the vibe? I could be completely wrong. I mean, they could have something built there that we haven't seen. I think they were in Cardiff for a bit of a pre-season last week.
Of course, they have a couple of games away from home now with Pearse Stadium.
That's coming, yeah, in due course. So, I mean, Drogheda is the one that on budget should be in the relegation mix in reality, but you just feel like they're not going to be the case. And I think those teams have had a couple of ding-dong games last year. It can be a sort of a contest when they meet. What Kevin Doherty has done is he's pretty much gone to the American market and decided that if they can't compete for the top League of Ireland players, they're gone and they've sort of farmed the USL. And they had Owen Lamb there last year, who's unfortunately got injured and missing this season. They've brought in a couple of players from that route and see how they go. On top of signing Brandon Kavanagh and bringing Mark Doyle back. So I think Drogheda will be fine across the season. But I mean, fine might just be respectable mid-table. But I think, Galway just need to. I just feel like it's a club that, the mood around it, speaking to people who are sort of following the club quite closely, they feel it's a little bit flat. So they need to start the season well, because it's just, I don't know, sometimes just fatigue kicks in after a period of time, and that's always a fear.
So you mentioned Drogheda's overseas recruitment there. Another club who've looked abroad for signings in the off-winter are Shelbourne. Joey O'Brien's side begin their campaign away to Waterford on Friday night, and obviously they've targeted very specific signings in the Jamestown Analytics partnership. Oran Casey come down from Cliftonville for a record transfer fee. Freitas, Portuguese striker. We were chatting to Joey O'Brien at the league launch about him. Says he's a real bit about him. He's not the type of striker who's going to get pushed around coming into the League of Ireland for the first time. Shell seem to have a real balanced squad from back to front, and I know there's a couple of predictions about them last year, but you really feel that they'll challenge this year, do you?
Yeah, no, I do. I think they probably have a really good age profile. I suppose the balance of the squad depends on, they needed to sign another defender, and let's see how Casey gets on. A lot of high hopes, and the Jamestown stuff is very data heavy, and they think he will fit the bill. And then like up front, I mean, if they'd been more efficient with their chances last year, they would have finished much closer in the league, and they probably would have got 6 or 7 points in Europe, which is probably cost them probably 7 figures really when you think about it. So Rodrigo Freitas has come from the 3rd division in Portugal, but this is a Jamestown signing. Like, Hearts have been powered by that. It's the Tony Bloom company. Like, Hearts have been very successful in Scotland this year by signing sort of players from a little bit left field, and they've been hugely successful with it. There's obviously a question mark when you see drop down the levels. Data might tell you a particular player suits, but is there more of a personality test about how they adjust to the league and to the lifestyle? And that's always a thing. So look, it's a serious company they're working with, so you would think that part of the profiling will factor in all of these things, these variables for how someone will adapt. But there's still that little question mark. But even if those overseas players don't quite click, they still have a really good squad. Like, they still have Kerr McEnroy and Jack Henry Francis for a full season. So in the midfield area in particular, they're really strong. They've got good options. So I'd be disappointed if they weren't on the premises. And look, they play Waterford, who probably a team who've always gone overseas. The only new manager in the Premier Division this year, as in starting in a new job, was John Daly. I know, like, you've spoken to Conan Noonan, they've paid a transfer fee for him. And they've probably picked up players with a bit of league experience who have been at sort of other clubs around the league, from likes of John Mahon and Benny Couto was at Cork City last year, and they still have Podge Hammond and Tommy Lonergan. So Waterford is one though where, like, they sort of tailed off a bit in the second half of last year. And again, in terms of the local vibes, I feel like they need to get off to a good start, because it can be draining just being mid-table, down towards the bottom over a couple of years. And if you're looking at the overview of the league, like, it is possible 4 of the top 5 teams will be from Dublin this year. You don't want that always to be the case. But like, there's no doubt that financially some of the regional clubs, unless they have Derry's muscle, are going to find it harder to compete.
And the last game this weekend, we've Dublin Derby to look forward to on Sunday. Another Aviva Stadium game in the opening weekend for the second year running. Bohs host St. Pat's. Bohs have had a very busy off-season, changing of the guard almost, you could say. The likes of Buckley and Cornwall moving on, Talbot too, and kind of new signings, Harry Vaughan on loan, Senan Mullen as well. Pats had a really, really disappointing season last year. They just weren't good enough finishing outside the European place for the first time in a couple of seasons. It's a big opportunity for both sides to kick off the campaign on a positive note.
Yeah, no, it is one of those where neither of these managers can start the season with confidence that like they won't be getting grief if they have a slow start. As much as Bohs had a great finish last year, well, a great outcome in terms of getting the European spot, and you would think that would give them Alan Reynolds a sort of degree of comfort there. But I think he knows well enough, that won't be enough to convince people, and they need to start this season well. But yeah, as you mentioned, like they've had to play the loan market, and while they have signed big on certain players and paid, the likes of Dawson Devoy and Ross Tierney didn't come cheap, there is no doubt like they still have a way to go to compete, probably with some of the wages at the other squads, like the round of the squad, is. So, and Pats, look, it's been a bit deflating for them to finish last season as they did. Vibe around this game again. I mean, I know Pats fans will say, look, a lot of their regulars are going, but it doesn't feel like the wider fan base, the cup final crowd who would go, are necessarily buzzing to get on board a bandwagon on Sunday. It feels like they need to be convinced. So,
which is a bit strange. Like, you think a game like this, an occasion like this, they'd turn out on their numbers, really.
Oh, I would think so. I think it's I'm on board with the concept, and I think it reflects well on everyone if it's a big event. And
why would you not go to the game to support your team?
Yeah, I sort of, that would be my attitude completely. But look, maybe it's just, again, maybe just the people, the floating support around Pats just need to be convinced. They had a few setbacks last year. So we'll sort of see where Pats are, because they've signed players, but again, they've had one or two injury issues in the off-season. They are a team that, I mean, it's Stephen Kenny's afraid of. No one is really, I haven't seen anyone tipping Pats to win the title when they'll have players in the group who might have that in their mind. But it's just hard. It's hard on the evidence of particularly how they got on in derbies last year. They were the worst team in Dublin derbies last year. They had a bad away record. Do they have the resolution to suddenly be a consistent force across the season? I mean, that's the question they have to answer.
Well, a new League of Ireland season is here. 5 big games to look forward to this Friday night. We'll be back on Friday night with our post-match review video live from Tallaght Stadium and the Brandywell. Thanks for watching.